Hi there. Good afternoon to everyone, and good to be here today. This is the CDOIQ MIT session today, covering building blocks for a modern data platform and a case study. I'm Khuti, President of Modak, and with me I have Mehra. Hi, Mayank.
Hi, Buzz. Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
Mayank is the head of our product management. So thanks everybody for joining. We have run a little poll before getting this session going, and in that poll we've had about 27 responses, and we asked the question around, is your organization considering a modern data platform? And the responses in real time, around 27, are saying just over 60% are saying they're either considering or researching or what is an MDA, a modern data platform, whilst 10% are either piloting and a whopping 41% are in production. So it's good to see a mix of sort of adoption out there, but the bulk of the people are researching and evaluating still. So if we look at kind of the business growth and the value of data, data assets are valuable. Data savvy companies which drive data as products are more successful, and the financial markets value them higher. Alibaba's chief data officer came up with coined a term called datafied, and what that really means is treating data as a strategic asset. And if you do that, you're 23 times more likely to keep your customers, to acquire those customers, 19 times more profitable, and 6 times more likely to keep your customers, retain your customers. The value is there. But what do we mean when what is the goal of data management? And it's evolved. It's evolved from knowing where your data is and looking after your data, and IT being the custodians of that data, and historically producing information and data sets. My first data cube effectively was in '92. So if you look at, we've been managing data for some time and producing information for the business. But more and more, we're asking data to produce insights. And this whole area of AI and how do we generate more and more value from data so we can produce more products and win in the market and understand the behaviors. What is actually going on within the data? Understand how products are being adopted by our customers and so on. So the whole area of knowledge is really coming together to fruition. So I believe we've moved into the whole area around looking at information and knowledge around what's possible. And the companies which do that are going to be benefiting significantly. So if we move on, this challenge isn't trivial. We've been at it a long time. If you look at some of the numbers here, the risks and the bar are high. It's not to remain relevant and be competitive in your markets and to win, you're going to require a different way of thinking. Gartner's saying 90% of enterprise data platforms will fail, and they're aligning that to platforms which are not ready for hybrid and multi-cloud. That's what they're really saying here. Equally, if you look at where is my data, so I can actually manage that data, 80% of customers don't have an accurate inventory of where that data is. So we have a degree of complexity. Firstly, complexity in terms of data silos. And you look at that complexity, how do you define complexity? Firstly, multiplicity. You have different things and many things available to you from different sources, different systems, and so on. Second thing, you have diversity, different formats, different storage formats, different areas, different locations. And lastly, there's interdependence between these. There is the ability for data to be joined together, and when it's joined together, then we can actually unlock that value. So it's not a trivial task in terms of actually bringing all these together in terms of data silos and managing that complexity. Added onto that is that we are now managing all that through many tools. So we go by, and whether we got legacy or incumbent tools around data integration, data governance, and so on, and the flavor of the month, we go acquire and put tools together. What that results in is another challenge. The complexity you've inherently put in place by managing different tools. And so how do you manage different tools as well as the data silos which are in place today? So tool silos is really a key issue which people are not considering, because you're going to think about interoperability and the need for a modern data platform, not only to look at your data silos and the points around complexity, but also look at tool silos and the interoperability and the orchestration of data across these tools. So modern data platforms effectively allow you to address those two huge dimensions. One on data complexity, one on interoperability of tool silos. Bring a future view of this, and the future is now. We went from Cloud 1.0 to 2.0. Many of us went cloud first, and we adopted and moved to cloud. And then we realized there are some hidden costs and unknowns, which are now surprises. And how do you manage that cost? And so companies are now saying, okay, we're going to operate in a hybrid model. And the data shows that 55% of that data is going to remain on premise. Companies are now saying repatriation of that data from cloud back to on-prem. So you're now going to be operating in a multi-cloud, hybrid cloud infrastructure. And so the third big dimension for a modern data platform is to look at how you future-proof yourself from a hybrid and multi-cloud perspective. I'll hand over to Mayank to sort of say, hopefully that sets the context and what our definition at Modak around what a modern data platform is.
Sure. Thanks, Buzz. I think that lays out the premise very well in terms of what are the building blocks of a modern data platform and what should the data and analytics teams be looking at when they think about building or scaling their modern data platforms. So one major point that we pointed out that with the proliferation of data silos, we also see adoption of multiple data management tools. And like Buzz pointed out, a lot of these tools are not interoperable. And we believe the missing piece in making these data management tools interoperable is using active metadata to automate some of the activities that these data management tools undertake, as well as to orchestrate data management tasks using active metadata as a primary driver. So that is one key component of a modern data platform, because as the platforms scale with the complexity in the type of data, in the volume of data, what becomes imperative to meet the business objectives is to be able to orchestrate activities seamlessly in an automated fashion. And we believe active metadata holds the key answer to that automation, which is required for building out a modern data platform. The second key part, Buzz pointed out about the trend towards hybrid cloud and the fact that increasingly most enterprises want to avoid a cloud vendor lock-in, as well as be able to better manage the cost and make those decisions around flexibly allocating workloads on-prem or on cloud and within cloud to different cloud providers. The key component or the key takeaway for the modern data platform is thus that it should allow the ability to take up the advantages of a hybrid cloud environment, to flexibly move workloads from on-prem to on-cloud environment and within on-cloud environment to different cloud providers. And that becomes a key part of the modern data platform. So while cloud adoption enables enterprises to scale, to have the flexibility, to be able to manage sudden workloads, hybrid cloud is what allows them operational efficiency and to be able to make better informed decisions on where to run the workloads. And a modern data platform for most enterprises would require to be capable to operate in this hybrid and multi-cloud environment. And that's the second key part of a modern data platform that we believe.
And just to add to that, it gives you it gives you optionality.
Yes.
You're controlling your destiny and what that future will be. So we see that optionality dimension or capability has been a key part of what's going to be required going forward.
Absolutely. That's the optionality that hybrid cloud enables, and a modern data platform should be in a position to exercise that optionality. The third big piece of a modern data platform is the ability to democratize access. We believe data is best played as a team sport. There are different teams that need to understand data, to be able to explore data, to be able to collaborate on data, and which is where democratization of access becomes very important. Because while the data holds the information, if we have to convert this information into knowledge, then that has to be combined with the domain expertise of the users who are going to be accessing the data. These could be citizen data scientists or data scientists, researchers, those who understand the domain knowledge. Once they're able to bring in the business context to the data, which is where we see that the information contained in the data can be translated into knowledge, and therefore democratization of access, ease of discoverability, ease of understanding the data, ability to be able to transform the data as per their needs, is something that becomes key components of democratization of access. And therefore data democratization and data discoverability is one of the key building blocks of a modern data platform. Finally, the ability to scale is critical. Data, as we know, is something which is increasing, almost doubling every year, and the pace of growth is expected to continue. Not only is the volume increasing, the diversity of data sources are also increasing. We've talked about earlier the data silos. Those silos are across the dimensions of different divisions that are collecting data, internal data, external data, on-prem data, on cloud data, data which is structured, data which is semi-structured or completely unstructured. The variety of data in that sense would continue to grow, and any modern data platform must account for the scalability to handle the variety of data as it continues to grow. So a key component of a modern data platform would be its ability to handle the growth in volume, in variety, and even in the velocity at which the data is increasing. We see different sources which are coming up, which are producing the data, and the velocity at which the data is getting produced has to be matched with the velocity at which it gets transformed into insights. And a modern data platform that can scale with that velocity is something that will be scalable to handle the requirements of a business as it grows. So those are some of the key components of a modern data platform. Automation using active metadata so that we are in a better position to orchestrate activities. The flexibility to work in a hybrid and a multi-cloud environment, because that is required in a world where the optionality should exist for enterprises to be able to move workloads where they best see those workloads running. Third, discoverability and democratization of access so that various end users are able to understand that data, are able to harness the information in that data to convert that information into knowledge. And finally, any modern data platform in an enterprise must be scalable to handle the growth in data volume, in velocity, and in variety. Those are the key building blocks of a modern data platform as we see them. And that brings me to talk about what are some of the things that we have experienced in the context of modern data platform. Modak Naboo is an active metadata-driven data engineering platform, an integrated data engineering platform that we've seen has been able to accelerate the journey of setting up modern data platform for various enterprises. And when we talk about the active metadata driving the orchestration of various activities, Typically in an enterprise, these data management activities would start from data discovery. So a way to automatically discover data that exists in an enterprise, to be able to create an inventory of those data assets and make them searchable for end users. Data discovery thus becomes one of the key components of data management activities. Then pipeline generation. When we are talking about pipelines for different varieties of sources, for sources where data runs into terabytes, for different on-prem, on-cloud, internal, external data, it becomes essential for any platform to be able to orchestrate these pipelines in an automated way. And which is where active metadata plays an important role. And the ability to orchestrate those pipelines in an automated way is something that becomes critical to the setting up of a modern data platform. All of this has to be.
Just to add to that, when we say modern data platform, with Naboo, it's built from the ground up. I mean, there's no legacy here. We're not, we weren't sort of taking something which was, and then just re-wrappering it and saying, here's a modern data platform. There's a significant amount of investment and co-creation which was done to effectively build the platform as you see it today. So there's no legacy here. It's cloud independent, cloud neutral in terms of on-prem or any cloud, and deployment across those. So this is kind of the foundations for this is to build it in the right sort of principles so they can actually adhere to a modern data platform strategy.
Absolutely. Built from ground up and looking at some of the key issues that data and analytics teams face and trying to use automation to address some of the most common, repeated, as well as time-intensive activities that data and engineering teams face in setting up modern data platforms. We talked about metadata repository. Another key component is data observability, where users are able to understand their data, are able to view key statistical parameters of that data using profiling information, be able to assess the quality of that data so that they can evaluate its use for various end use cases, look at some of the metrics around data. So observability becomes a key component in setting up a modern data platform. And then similarly, we have data mapping and standardization for various use cases, lineage to understand and trust the sources of data so that they are better able to assess the utility of that data for their various use cases. Tagging, which adds the business context to a data set and therefore combines a critical business context to any kind of a data set. And finally, transformations, which allow users to be able to prepare the data set for their particular end use cases. Typically, those are the activities that are required to convert data, which is raw data sitting in silos, and to convert this into curated data products, which can then be used for various end use cases or for purposes such as data science, machine learning, and so on. And in this journey, the orchestration for various activities, we estimate that results or that has the potential of being automated by up to 70%. The rest 30% is something which depends on various use cases, but using an active metadata driven data engineering platform, a large chunk of these activities can be automated. And thus the process of setting up a modern data platform or running a modern data platform can be significantly accelerated and scaled up. And which is the value that a platform like Modak Naboo brings, that it is able to automate these activities using metadata and accelerate the entire process of setting up modern data platforms.
And just to add that automation cannot be underestimated. Resources are scarce, and talent is there's a war out there for talent. So effectively, how can you use the same skill sets, upskill people to other activities, move them to other activities, so that you've automated as much of this data, so you can become a datafied organization in the future through automation, and so free up the talent within your organization to do higher value activities through automation. And you'll see that in some of the capabilities which Naboo embeds for automation.
Absolutely. And that's about really addressing one of the first components that we talked about for the modern data platform in terms of orchestrating or using metadata to orchestrate various activities. I'll talk about the second key driver now of the modern data platform, which is the ability to operate in a hybrid cloud environment, and which is where the orchestration capabilities in Modak Naboo allow data processing to be carried out across different environments. These could be on-prem environments, these could be on cloud, on Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, on specific products from these service providers, or let's say Cloudera clusters. So the ability to be able to dispatch the data processing jobs across different environments becomes key for the enterprises to adopt a hybrid cloud environment. And in that sense, Modak Naboo provides that capabilities to be able to use different cloud environments to run the data processing jobs. Modak also, the Naboo product also provides the ability to orchestrate these jobs using a low-code approach or a no-code approach, so that it's not intensive in terms of writing custom code. Buzz talked about the war for talent and how scarce talent can be, which is where it becomes essential for the data engineers to be able to utilize their time in a way that they can automate a lot of regular activities and focus on the high value added innovative activities. And a low code approach to utilize a multi-cloud and a hybrid cloud environment enables data engineers to be able to do that. So that's the second key part of Naboo, the ability to orchestrate workloads across different environments. We have an in-house framework called Almirin, which is a low code approach for writing and maintaining Spark jobs that allows us to maintain these Spark jobs, to upgrade these Spark jobs, to be able to use Spark for various data processing activities. And these Spark jobs are then with the orchestration capability of Naboo using bots framework, we are then able to dispatch these jobs to various on-prem or on-cloud environments, and that brings true hybrid cloud capabilities to Naboo. I will now get into a brief description about Naboo as well as a case study. We have used Modak Naboo for some of the top customers, enterprises with a scale of terabytes of data, hundreds of thousands of tables, hundreds of different data sources, and how we've seen some of the key capabilities of Modak Naboo that we've talked about, helping to accelerate the entire process of setting up modern data platforms, as well as allowing these modern data platforms to be able to scale to different needs and meet the business objectives that these enterprises have. We will take an example of a life sciences customer. This is headquartered in the US, a top enterprise which is looking to optimize its data management activities so that they are in a position to harness the knowledge from their data assets. The solution that was created using Naboo involved using Naboo in collaboration with Cloudera to create an end-to-end solution that allows acceleration of setting up the modern data platform. So inside of 12 weeks, the data platform could be set up and running and be available for end use cases where different curation activities could be carried out to transform the data for the required use cases. And how Naboo works under the hood is that it gets the metadata from various sources, stores that metadata in a metadata repository. So the data spiders on the left pull in the technical metadata, store it in the metadata repository of Naboo. And then this metadata is used by the bots framework to orchestrate various Spark jobs that are written using Modak Almirin. These Spark jobs, like we talked about, the capability exists to execute it on different compute environments, In this particular case, the solution that was implemented for the customer utilized Cloudera data platform to execute these data processing jobs. Now, using a metadata-driven approach and the bots framework, the pipelines were created in an automated way to move data from various data sources to a modern data platform running on AWS. And then Naboo features such as discovery, lineage, fingerprinting, tagging. These allowed the data sets to be explorable, and these data sets were then organized into various data domains as data products. So on the right-hand side, what we see are examples of some of the data products that were created related to, for a life sciences customer, related to drug safety, related to real-world evidence, related to analyzing clinical trials. And these data products are then utilized by end users such as data stewards, data analysts, citizen data scientists, who are then able to utilize these data assets for their various use cases. So the solution end-to-end, starting with raw data with various formats, we were able to accelerate the entire process of setting up modern data platforms by using metadata as a primary driver, using that metadata to orchestrate the ingestion and orchestrate the curation processes, and then organize these data assets into refined data products according to different data domains that can then be used by various roles such as data scientists, researchers, data analysts to use for their end use cases. And if we look at it from a point of view of how we refer to data fabric and data mesh, the left side where we are talking about orchestrating the activities for ingestion, curation, using a metadata-driven approach, that part is what can be mapped to a data fabric. And the right side where we are talking about organizing data into domain-wise data products that are then accessible for end users, this is the part that can be mapped to a data mesh. And in that sense, Modak Naboo has enabled a solution which leverages the data fabric, data mesh capabilities to allow end users to be able to access their modern data platform and use those data products for their business needs.
And the other dimension of this, and just is if you look at the coordination which needs to occur organizationally, is you got the data fabric, kind of an operational aspect of it, but then you got the business side in terms of ownership and governance of the data and the quality of that data and what that data, what fit for purpose logic we're applying to that data from an insight perspective. So how we bring organizational alignment is also important here. And so what the fabric allows us to do is the operational aspects of it and make sure that is brought together. But more the mesh side of it is effectively those curated gold standard data products, which are now available to answer the questions of tomorrow, which the business is trying to do. What I'm going to do is really jump to some of the core capabilities in Naboo and what it does. Firstly is orchestration of data pipelines. And what we've done in terms of orchestration of data pipelines is these data spiders which go and crawl and find data and build this metadata, technical metadata repository for you. And it's using that active metadata repository then allows us to build a low-code approach for ingestion and building thousands of ingestion pipelines and hundreds of them orchestrating that movement data going forward. So that's kind of the heart of it. That orchestration then gets managed through these bots, which move the data into that sort of target repository. If you think about it in terms of the cloud and so on. So that's kind of the first part of this. The second part of it, and the benefits of that when we do that in terms of, you can see some of the UI, which is UI driven and managing your data pipelines, is that companies which are doing this can benefit from massive acceleration. So typically the traditional tools, which we've come across and replaced in some cases, you could see that there's about a 12-month timeline to actually go put all this together. Naboo and the capabilities Modak has, we've been able to do that within 3 months. So significant acceleration in building out your data fabric in terms of that net of data connectivity across your data. The next is, how do you manage all that data in terms of building those business data domains and democratizing that data access? And so we covered that earlier in the first session, is really these logical groupings of data domains are put together. This is where the curation pipelines are now coming together to harmonize, normalize, standardize the data so that the data is what I call a gold standard for consumption. And the governance here, as I said earlier, was really having the business taking some governance and role around how this data is used from a consumption, AI, analytics, dashboards capability perspective. And that governance, moving the bar from kind of IT ownership to business ownership of these data domains. And these data domains are effectively a logical view of what that data is and is controlled. Access is controlled through groups and tenants and so on. You can then search on that, whether within Modak Naboo to go find those tables and columns through an intuitive search user interface, or we can push that into a graph database, which our clients are doing, where you can have a scalable, more capability for search as you go forward. So you can have search on the metadata, but also from a search from a data domain perspective in a business context, using tools like a graph database as you go forward. And then you have this exploration of data sets and data lineage, which can be also viewed from a graph perspective, from a relationships perspective as you go forward. So all that is building out this data domains from a consumption perspective. And you can, the key benefit here is the first business data domain took months to build. The second one was done in a month. The speed at which you can accelerate not only the stand-up of a modern data platform, but also the ability to build those data domains out and data products out, back to that being a datified company, is significant in terms of speed of acceleration. And here's where we go. Here's where you can see some of the UI, the profiling, looking at that data, when it's ingested, what the quality of that data is, have we got any duplications in that data, understanding that data, but then also looking at it from a relationship perspective, what those relationships are across your data sets. And so you can make sense of that data from a consumption perspective. So that's kind of the second. And then data preparation. And this is something which we're invested significantly in, and building out an approach for building these curation pipelines in what we call a workspace environment. Collaboration between the domain experts who understand the data, usually in the business, and the context of how that business is operating, and then mapping those relationships out in terms of transformations which need to occur, and then scheduling those out. So the collaborative environment, i.e. these workspaces, and then orchestrating those workspaces so you can build those data domain products at speed and scale, is what we allow you to do through this UI, which we call the workspace environment, building out these curated data pipelines and transformations as we go forward, and agnostic of where that gets run. And remember that orchestration slide we had, where we don't care where the compute is, that is key. So Spark being this kind of standard around how people are doing data transformations going forward, then we can be agnostic of where that compute layer is and the transformation which then occurs, and optimize the cost for that. So really, that's kind of the essence of Naboo and where we're at. I'm just going to basically open it up on some of the questions which have come in. First one which has come in is, what are the resources and skill sets which are required to manage Naboo? And firstly, we've automated as much of the deployment of Naboo through containers as possible, so simplifying the infrastructure deployment, and so fits in with the standards by which your IT organization is adopted and the security protocols which are put in place. So that is a seamless exercise. Secondly, in terms of managing those data pipelines, is we've used a low-code, no-code approach in terms of user interface. You saw that earlier, where we're building out these pipelines through using a UI approach to building them and deploying them, and having a significant amount of complexity around, say, schema changes which need to be put in place, so that the management of building these data pipelines is through a user interface. And so leveraging, that makes the point around, can we leverage and train and upskill existing workers within a client to use some of the Naboo capabilities? Absolutely. If that's not possible and you need to augment that, then Modak offers what we call studios. These are pods of capabilities which then allow you to sort of scale with us, okay, and augment your teams. We call this teaming, where we're working with your teams and other partners and bringing those capabilities together. So we see the ability to use existing resources, but also augment those resources in your existing partners to go forward in terms of managing Naboo going forward. The second question which has come in is, well, our data is in with SaaS providers. We have our data in various SaaS providers out there, and they restrict people who can access and who can crawl that data from a pipeline, from a spider's perspective. So how do we provide that connectivity? My experience is that most SaaS providers provide APIs to that data. And so as long as we can securely connect to those APIs and we can manage that relationship, then we can effectively use the API approach, API first approach, to effectively access that data and then profile that data. We're only bringing the metadata, remember, we're not bringing the raw data in any way. We're just bringing the metadata, what is that data, into that active metadata repository, so we know what's there. So through an API approach, I believe we can handle that. The next area, sorry.
And just to add to that, Buzz, I mean, this is the experience that we've had with the applications such as Salesforce. There are applications used in pharma called Viva Vault. These are all apps that we have experienced have the APIs, and then we are able to work with those APIs to fetch the metadata and use it. The alternative approach could be when there are, let's say, homegrown custom built applications, is that if required, a custom utility could be built to sync the data from the application to Naboo. But in our experience, like you rightly pointed out, most applications would expose these APIs, and Naboo can consume those APIs to populate the metadata repository.
Yeah, and another question which has come in is, basically, do you operate with, are you a catalog company? And we're not a catalog company. You will have investments you've made in data catalog, in fact, Calibras and Relations of this world. So you have those investments we've made. We'll interoperate with them. And that is really the key point here. The Naboo has been built for interoperability with your existing data integration tool sets, or your cloud provider tool sets, which you may have moved to, or your catalog tool sets, which you have put in place. And so that interoperability allows us to then build that active metadata repository. So no need to replace your existing investment in catalogs. Really well done. You've invested there. Let's go leverage that. You put governance around that, great practices. Let's go build and leverage on that as we go forward. That's a great question which has come in. Another question we normally get is around, how do you build these data products and data mesh? So what is a data mesh in your experience? And so we try to address that, obviously, at the early stage around data domain and data products. Just to say that really we see the pendulum moving towards ownership and governance with the business side of the equation, where true definition of this, where they're owning the data products. And they're dictating the pace at which those have been created. That does not mean your investments you made in your data mart infrastructure is void. So IT is investment, obviously, in significant data warehousing infrastructures in the past, and there's a lot of good practices out there. So having these coexist effectively, where your data marts and your data warehousing are in place, reporting what's going on in terms of historical and analytics and so on, but complementing it with these data products, which are more looking at answers for the future. Okay, so what are the kind of questions the business is trying to answer from product or markets and customers and so on from a future, and allowing that to your data teams. Okay, so allowing that access to your AI teams, allowing that access to your AI teams to go and experiment and build new models out going forward. So we see that if, one question we absolutely get is, we invest in, isn't a data mart the same as a data product? And the answer is no, because the data product is really around answering questions you don't know. And it's multi-use case driven. While a data mart is essentially know the knowns, and is usually generally around a couple of use cases which you've predefined in predefined dashboards. While a data mesh and the data product is more around looking at those unknowns and answering the questions of tomorrow. So hopefully that answers some of the questions we hear around what's the difference between a data mart and a data mesh. With that, I'll just summarize the poll we've had. The poll has had 79 respondents, and those 79 respondents have said, well, let's have a look at this. Nearly 68% are either researching or understanding what an MDM, modern data platform is. So 60% are still in that exploratory area, and the rest are either in, 9% are in piloting, and 20% are actually in production and operating this at scale. So hopefully today, you've, in the Modak team and some of the questions we've asked allows you to understand what a modern data platform is. There is a question which has just come in. So there's a track producer here. Let me just find that. So somebody just asked, can you please say what is a data product again? Okay. So first thing is, it's a set of different data sets come together from whether internal or external. Usually the business has defined that rather than IT, okay? The business has said, look, we need these kind of questions in the future to be answered. And they're owning that curation process in terms of standardizing it, normalizing and harmonizing it, as I said. So the entire curation process, the business is at the table. It's not being done to them effectively, yeah? And so that's one aspect. So multiple data sets, internal and external to the organization, co-creation between IT teams and the business, but the business taking a bigger role in terms of what that data product should do, and then curating that data product. And it has it's API-driven, accessible, discoverable data product. So that's a kind of third aspect of it, as its life cycle as to what it's doing. And then the consumption of that data product is to enable multiple use cases to be addressed, not just one or two, 10s, 30, 40. I'm with a client right now, and then in a quarter, they're going to be building 20, 30 dashboards against particular data products. And so the acceleration of use cases from a business perspective is dramatically increased because this curated golden data product with different data sets have been brought together to answer multiple use cases, and then accessed by AI teams. The last area, accessed by AI teams, we can now explore that data, query that data, model that data to answer those questions which haven't been thought of. Hopefully that helps sort of summarize our view of a data product and what that means. If there's no other questions, I think, Mayank, anything to add here?
Yeah, I think that kind of summarizes the data product. It ranges in complexity. It ranges from use cases, and it is something that is defined by the business in terms of what are the objectives they're trying to meet with the data product. And like you mentioned, it is addressable, it is discoverable, it is something which is contextualized to the business use case, and which is where a data product is something which is a finished outcome of a process that starts from raw data, ingesting it, curating it, transforming it, combining it with different other sources, and then finally creating data assets that are usable by various AI models, by various consumers for their use cases.
Beautifully put. As we got a few minutes here, another question which has come in. It says, how does it work on transporting real-time events? Mayank, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so in terms of real time, the use cases that we've seen is around, let's say, syncing it up at a very close frequency between source and a modern data platform, and which is where the spiders which pull in the metadata in the first part, as well as the pipelines, they can be set to operate at a very near real time frequency to pull in data in the order of every 5 minutes, every 3 minutes, and so on. With the version that we're talking about in terms of the workspace capabilities, we are also bringing in capabilities to take in, let's say, Kafka events or use Kafka topics as destinations, and bring in the complete real-time capability. So platform exists. I think the idea for us is in terms of adding various sources, depending on the use cases, the underlying infrastructure or the underlying capability that allows us to plug in different sources, whether this is for batch or for real time exists. And then these can be added depending on the use cases that the customer would have.
Absolutely. And just to say, the underlying sort of compute engine around Spark can handle both kind of the batch and the real-time nature of all this in terms of orchestrating that workload, so that so you can build those curated data products as you go forward. Yeah. I think that's about it from our side. I appreciate everybody's time and apologies for the break we had. If you got any more questions or need more explanation, please do not hesitate to contact us. Baz Khuti, the president of Modak US. That's my email address. Or Mayank, thank you so much for all your time and appreciate everyone's time and support. Thank you so much. Have a great day.